In a dusty garage on the outskirts of a nowhere town, Jax Monroe fights to keep his father's legacy alive, one rusted engine at a time. Burdened by debt, betrayal, and fading dreams, he has no time for mysteries. Until a blood-red motorcycle crashes just outside his shop. Behind the helmet is Riley Quinn, tough, gorgeous, and strangely out of place. She claims to be a wandering biker, no ID, no past, just a broken machine and a deeper secret. What Jax doesn't know is that Riley isn't just another traveler. She's Ariel Quinn, a runaway billionaire and tech mogul hiding from a ruthless corporate coup. In his grease-stained world, she finds something she never had in her high-rise life. Honesty, grit, and unexpected connection. But secrets don't stay buried forever. As sparks fly and hearts tangle, Riley's past creeps closer, and when Jax uncovers the truth, it threatens to destroy everything they've built. In a town where engines speak louder than words, can love survive when trust is shattered? This is a story of horsepower, heartache, and healing, a mechanic with nothing left to lose, and a billionaire with everything to hide. Welcome to Hidden Sparks. Buckle up, it's about to get real. The sun bled gold across the cracked asphalt as Jax Monroe wiped the sweat from his brow with a grease-stained rag. His hands, calloused and blackened from years of work, paused over the engine of an old Chevy truck that hadn't run since the last presidential election. The air inside the garage was thick with motor oil, heat, and the quiet hum of desperation. He leaned over the open hood, frustration simmering beneath his ribs, the same way it had for the past year since the bank called in the last of his father's loans. The garage, Monroe Auto and Cycle, was barely clinging to life, much like Jax himself. Once a local staple, the shop had become a relic, an afterthought in a town more interested in chain stores and online orders than local craftsmanship. Jax gave the wrench one more frustrated twist. The bolt snapped. Damn it! The clang of metal echoed through the empty garage as the wrench hit the floor. He bent down to retrieve it when a deep rumble split the silence. Low and powerful, not the typical whine of a commuter bike. It was the kind of engine that growled with purpose. He stepped outside just in time to see a streak of black and red fly past the shop. Fast. Too fast for the curve ahead. Then came the screech. Then the crash. Jax bolted down the driveway. Dust rose like smoke from the edge of the road, where a sleek motorcycle, jet black with crimson accents, lay sideways, a thin line of smoke curling from its engine. The rider, clad in a matte black leather jacket and helmet, was already trying to sit up, one hand clutching her side. "Whoa, whoa, easy," Jax called out, sliding beside her. The woman looked up, her helmet visor reflecting the sun like a mirror. "I'm fine," she muttered, breathing shallowly. "Fine's not what I'd call someone who just ate pavement at 60. She waved off his help, but the moment she tried to stand, her leg buckled. Jax caught her before she hit the ground again. "Okay, maybe not fine," she admitted, breathless. Her voice was low, smooth, controlled. Jax helped her sit on the edge of the gravel. "You got a name?" A beat. "Riley. Riley Quinn." Jax tilted his head. "Are you local?" "Just passing through." He raised an eyebrow. "Right, with a one-of-a-kind Vincent Black Shadow custom and no plates." She looked down at the motorcycle like it was someone else's mistake. "I said I'm just passing through." Jax shrugged. "Your ride says otherwise." They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the ticking of the bike's hot engine. Finally, Jax stood and offered her a hand. "Well, Riley Quinn, you're in luck. That pile of bolts over there is my garage. Let's get you off the road." She hesitated, then, nodding once, took his hand. Back inside the garage, Jax eased her onto a stool. She winced, rolling up her pant leg to reveal a growing bruise on her shin. No break, thankfully, but the way she looked around, like she was cataloging every exit, didn't escape him. "You can leave the bike out front for now," he said, walking toward the garage door. "I'll take a better look at it tomorrow." "I need it fixed fast," she said. Jax turned back, narrowing his eyes. "Lady, I don't even know what kind of damage we're looking at. This ain't Amazon Prime." She smirked. "I'll pay." He crossed his arms. "Card, cash, or crypto?" Her smirk faded. "I lost my wallet." "Of course you did," Jax sighed. "Look, you're lucky I don't charge for pulling folks out of ditches. You want a room, there's a motel 3 blocks down." She glanced at the growing bruise on her leg, then back at him. "What if I work it off?" Jax blinked. "You, in here?" "I can lift things," she said coolly. "I'm good with my hands." He didn't mean to look skeptical, but apparently his face had its own opinions. "Give me a day," she said, lifting her chin. "If I'm useless, I'll limp out." Jax hesitated. Something in her voice, calm but laced with tension, caught him off guard. She wasn't just some lost traveler. There was something more, something guarded. "Fine," he muttered. "One day." As he turned back to the busted engine, Jax couldn't shake the feeling that whatever storm had brought Riley Quinn into his life had only just begun, and he had no idea how deep it would go. The crash replayed in Jax's head like a looped film reel long after the sun dipped behind the mountains. He crouched beside the motorcycle, now pulled into the garage, inspecting it under the flickering overhead lamp. The thing was a beast, sleek, low-slung, impossibly custom. Everything from the hand-stitched leather seat to the titanium exhaust screamed money. The kind of money that didn't usually roll through small-town Arizona without a security team in tow. Riley Quinn, or whatever her real name was, had retreated to the corner of the garage, where Jax had tossed an old cot and a spare blanket. She watched him with an intensity that felt more like surveillance than curiosity. "You planning on sleeping with one eye open?" Jax asked, not looking up. She didn't flinch. "Depends. You planning on robbing me in my sleep?" He snorted. "I wouldn't even know where to start. Your bike's worth more than my garage." "Exactly," she muttered. He paused, straightening. "That an admission?" "Just an observation," she said coolly. The silence stretched again. Jax turned back to the bike, muttering as he loosened the twisted frame. "It'll take at least a week to fix, maybe more, depending on how hard it hit the gravel." "I don't have a week." "Not my problem," Jax replied, too tired to sugarcoat. She exhaled sharply. "I'll make it worth your while." Jax froze. That phrase. People only used it when they wanted something badly, when they were hiding something even worse. He turned slowly. "Lady, this is not that kind of shop." "I didn't mean it like that," she said, finally showing the smallest crack in her armor. He studied her, shoulders square, jaw set, but the tension in her fingers, curled tightly around the edge of the cot, gave her away. Fear. She wasn't just stranded, she was running. From what? Or from who? Jax didn't ask. He'd learned the hard way that secrets reveal themselves eventually, like oil leaks, messy, dangerous, and impossible to ignore for long. Instead, he changed the subject. "Are you hungry?" She blinked. "What?" "Food, you know, that thing people need to survive?" "I'm fine." Jax rolled his eyes and disappeared into the office. Minutes later, he returned with a can of chili, 2 metal spoons, and a dented pot. They sat in silence while it heated on the portable stove. The smell filled the garage with something warm, something familiar. As they ate in silence, Jax finally asked, "So, Riley, what's a woman like you doing tearing up highway curves at sunset without a helmet cam or backup?" She paused mid-spoonful. "I like to disappear." "Funny, you don't look the type to blend in." She smiled faintly. "That's the idea." Morning light filtered through the grime-coated windows of the garage, casting long slashes of gold across the concrete floor. Jax was already under the hood of a rusted-out Bronco when Riley stirred on the cot. She sat up slowly, stretching her bruised leg, and took in the room as if seeing it for the first time. Cluttered, chaotic but functional, like Jax. She limped over, her eyes on the black shadow. "Are you always up this early?" "Work doesn't do itself," he said flatly. "Grab a wrench. Let's see if you're as good with your hands as you say." The challenge in his voice didn't go unnoticed. Riley accepted it without a word. The morning passed in a rhythm of tools and torque. Riley surprised him. She wasn't just faking it, she actually knew her way around an engine. Not like a pro, but like someone who'd taken the time to learn the basics and wasn't afraid to get dirty. She didn't flinch when oil splattered her jeans or when a bolt refused to budge. She didn't complain when he barked orders. She just kept working. "So," he said, wiping sweat from his brow, "still no wallet?" "Nope." "No license?" She hesitated. "Nope." Jack straightened, wiping his hands. "No ID, no phone, no name I can verify. Are you sure you're not a ghost?" "Would it matter?" "Only if you turn out to be the kind that bites." She cracked a smile. "I don't bite, Monroe." The way she said his name, confident, smooth, set something off in his chest. He shook it off. "You didn't find this garage by accident." "I didn't find this town by choice." That shut him up. After lunch, she stayed to help with the Black Shadow. They worked quietly, the kind of silence that settled between people who didn't trust each other, but also didn't need to speak to get things done. And still, Jax watched her, the way she flinched at certain sounds, how her eyes darted to the street every time a car passed. Someone was looking for her. By the third day, Riley was part of the rhythm. She knew where the tools were, prepped parts without being asked, and didn't hesitate to call Jax out when he was being stubborn, which was often. "I said the crankshaft isn't aligned properly," she said, crossing her arms. Jax raised an eyebrow. "And I said I've rebuilt more bikes than you've had birthdays." She didn't blink. "Still crooked." He sighed and looked. She was right. "Beginner's luck," he muttered. "Sure, let's call it that." The tension between them wasn't subtle anymore. It crackled. Every brush of the hand, every stolen glance, every late-night meal over a busted heater. Jax tried to keep things professional, but Riley, she didn't make it easy. One night, as a storm rolled across the desert, knocking out the power, Jax lit a lantern and found her sitting on the garage's roof, legs dangling over the edge. He climbed up beside her. "Nice view," he said. She nodded. "Do you ever want to leave?" "Used to, before the place owned me." "I get it." "You?" "I'm trying," she said. "Just haven't figured out what comes next." He looked at her, eyes softened by moonlight. "Whatever it is, maybe it starts here." She turned, really looked at him. "You're not like anyone I've ever met, Jax Monroe." Before he could stop himself, he replied, "And you're nothing like who you pretend to be." Their lips met, brief, electric. It didn't feel like a mistake. Not yet. Riley stood alone in the garage after Jax left to pick up a part from a supplier in the next town over. The rumble of his truck faded into silence, leaving her in the thick stillness of midday heat and motor oil. She wandered past the workbench, eyes tracing the chaos. Scattered tools, old invoices, pictures of a young Jax with a tall, broad-shouldered man. His father, no doubt. The photo was taped to the cabinet door, curling at the edges, worn from time and memory. She reached out, hesitated, then ran her finger along the frame. "This is what real legacy looks like," she murmured to herself. For the past few nights, she'd barely slept. She dreamed of glass towers, courtroom whispers, and the weight of her name. Ariel Quinn, founder of vast tech, once praised in Forbes, now hunted by her own board. They called it hostile restructuring, but it was a coup, plain and simple. Her COO, a man she'd once trusted, had conspired with investors to oust her. So she ran. Left behind her phones, her assistants, her skyline condo, took a bike, a bag of cash, and disappeared. But the money was gone now, donated anonymously to the shelters she used to support from afar. She didn't want that version of herself anymore. She needed something real, something that didn't feel like it could be taken from her by a boardroom vote. And Jax, he was real. Frustrating, guarded, stubborn, but grounded, honest. The kind of man who didn't care who you were as long as you pulled your weight. She'd begun to admire that more than she expected. Just then, a hum broke her thoughts. A black SUV creeping slowly past the garage. Tinted windows, no plates. Her heart thudded. She ducked behind the door, watching it roll by. It didn't stop, but the message was clear. Someone was looking. She'd left barely any trail, but someone had found the edge of it. She inhaled slowly. She couldn't stay here forever, and when Jax found out who she really was, would he hate her for the lie? Would he believe it wasn't a game? That evening, Jax returned, unaware of the SUV. Riley was quiet, unusually so, as they worked late. He didn't press her. He'd learned she only talks when she wanted to. But something had changed, and soon she knew the truth would find them both. It started with Maya, like everything did in that town. She ran the diner across from the garage, knew everyone's birthday and business before they did. The kind of woman who smiled sweetly while extracting every secret from behind a slice of pie. Jax was nursing a coffee at the counter while Riley tightened bolts across the street. He barely noticed Maya's eyes following her every move through the window. "She's not from around here," Maya said casually. Jax grunted. What gave it away, the leather jacket or the $60,000 bike? Maya leaned in. "You check her name?" "Didn't need to." "You always check the name, Jax," she said, voice lowering, "especially when it's someone that pretty. That's secretive." Jax didn't reply. He didn't want to admit the thought had crossed his mind many times, but Riley had been honest enough to work, sweat, and stay. He didn't owe her suspicion just because she didn't pour out her life story. Still, something gnawed at him. Later that day, he found Riley sitting on the tailgate, wiping grease off her hands. "Have you ever been to New York?" he asked suddenly. Her eyes didn't flicker. "Once. Didn't like the noise." "Figured you for the city type." "I'm whatever I need to be," she said simply. That answer was too smooth, too prepared, and Jax knew what lies sounded like. His former business partner, Ben Lorne, had fed him one every day for a year, while skimming cash and leaving him with the debts. He wouldn't be burned twice. That night, another car appeared near the garage. Stopped longer this time, headlights off. Jax stepped outside with a crowbar in hand, daring them to move. The car peeled away. Riley watched from the shadows, her heart pounding. Her past was circling like a vulture, and Jax didn't even know the half of it. Jax couldn't deny it anymore. He was falling for her. It wasn't just the way Riley moved around the garage like she belonged there. It was the way she saw him, really saw him. Not as the broke mechanic, not as the guy whose dream got steamrolled by betrayal and debt, but as a man who hadn't given up, a man still trying. No one had looked at him like that since his father died. That night he invited her to the back lot where the desert opened up and the stars poured down like silver rain. They sat beside a fire barrel drinking cheap beer from mismatched mugs. "You always wanted to be a mechanic?" she asked, leaning back on her hands. "Born into it," he said. "My dad taught me when I was 6. We rebuilt a Mustang engine before I could ride a bike." She smiled. "Must have been nice." It was. He stared into the flames. Then he got sick. Cancer. Everything fell apart after that. "I'm sorry." Jack shrugged. "Everyone's got a sad story." She hesitated, then whispered, "I was supposed to be the youngest CEO to take a company public on 2 continents." He looked at her, surprised. She chuckled bitterly. "Sorry, that was a weird thing to say." "No," he said, frowning. "That's oddly specific." Riley froze. He could see it, the calculation behind her eyes. "Riley," he said slowly, "what's your real name?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Just then the fire crackled and a gust of wind scattered sparks into the air between them, hot, glowing, dangerous. He leaned forward. "Tell me." And for a moment she wanted to. She almost did, but fear clutched her ribs. Instead, she kissed him, hard and sudden. He didn't resist, not at first, but even as they tangled under the stars, the unanswered question pulsed like an engine in his chest. Who was Riley Quinn, and what was she hiding that scared her more than anything else? The garage was silent, too silent. Riley had stepped out for coffee. Just a normal morning, just like the dozens before. But Jax couldn't shake the feeling that something didn't add up. That kiss from the night before still burned on his lips, and yet something was off. The name, the bike, the stories that never quite lined up. He couldn't help it anymore. He had to know. Her backpack was stashed behind the tool cabinet. He hesitated, hand hovering above the zipper. He didn't want to betray her trust, but how could he trust someone who refused to offer any? With a frustrated breath, he opened it. Inside was a weathered tablet, dead battery. He plugged it into the garage wall and waited. The moment it powered up, everything shattered. News articles, stock tickers, photo after photo of her, shorter hair, sharper suits standing on the cover of business magazines. Headlines like Ariel Quinn, the billionaire who won Silicon Valley, and Vast-Tech's golden girl faces boardroom rebellion. Jack stepped back as if the screen had burned him. Ariel, not Riley, the woman he'd trusted, kissed, had lied to him from the start. She wasn't running from a mistake, she was running from herself. When Riley returned, balancing 2 paper cups, she froze at the sight of him staring at the tablet. "Jax," she said quietly. "Don't," he cut in. "Don't lie again." She set the coffee down gently. "You went through my bag. You lied to me every day. I had to. You chose to." He paced away, then turned, voice sharp. "Do you know how much I trusted you? How much I let myself trust you?" "I didn't come here to hurt you," she said. "I didn't even plan to stay. I just needed to disappear." "You needed to use someone." "No," her voice cracked. "I gave away everything, the money, the company. I didn't want it anymore." "You think that makes you noble?" Jax's laugh was bitter. You played poor to feel what? Real? Clean? I stayed because of you, she whispered beside. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, she didn't look confident. She looked lost. I need you to leave, he said flatly. Jax, now. And like that, the connection they'd built, piece by piece, collapsed like a house of cards in a storm. Riley rode out of town with nothing but her bike and the ache in her chest. She didn't stop for gas, didn't sleep. She just kept going until the desert gave way to steel and concrete, until cell towers reconnected her to a world she'd tried so hard to forget. The city felt colder than she remembered. Within hours, her name was trending again. Ariel Quinn returns. Vast tech heir apparent seen at airport. Her legal team called. Investors begged for statements. Her enemies stayed quiet, waiting for her next move. She didn't care. All she could think about was a broken-down garage in a forgotten town, a man with oil on his hands and hurt in his eyes. Jax. She replayed everything, every glance, every shared silence, every flicker of hope. She hadn't planned to fall for him, that wasn't part of the escape, but it happened, and now it was ruined. But Riley had never been one to back down. She'd built $1 billion empire from scratch. She could rebuild this, too. Not her reputation, not her company, her heart. It started with doing what she was born to do, fight. She held a press conference, admitted the coup, outlined the truth. A scandal erupted, but so did support. The media called it a comeback. She didn't care. All she cared about was being able to walk into that garage one last time with nothing to hide. The garage hadn't changed. Still cluttered, still half-lit, still smelled like rust and gasoline. But Jax had changed. He was thinner, tired, more closed off than ever. When Riley stepped out of the car, not her motorcycle this time, but a sleek black sedan driven by a woman in business attire, he looked up from the workbench and froze. For a moment, neither said a word. Then, softly, "You shouldn't be here." "I know. What do you want?" Riley walked slowly to him, heels clicking on the floor. "I want to fix what I broke." Jax wiped his hands, watching her like she was a mirage. "And how exactly do you plan to do that, Miss Quinn?" She flinched at the formality. "I'm not here like her," she said. "I'm here as me, the woman who fell in love with you, the one who doesn't want to run anymore." He looked away, jaw clenched. "Takes more than pretty words." "I'm not offering words." She pulled out a thick folder. "I'm offering a deal, a real one. Monroe Performance Motors, full partner, custom garage, national expansion." Jax took the folder but didn't open it. "I don't want your money." "I don't want to give you money," she said. "I want to give you a future, one we build together." The air between them crackled. Finally, he looked up. "You sure you want to be tied to this life? The grease, the grit, the breakdowns." She stepped closer. "It's the only life that's ever felt real." And for the first time in weeks, Jax's expression softened. "Then let's talk." They sat together at the workbench as the sky outside turned amber and a new chapter began. No secrets, no disguises, just two people daring to trust again. The office above the garage, once filled with rusted cabinets and overdue bills, now held blueprints, renderings, and a bright whiteboard scribbled with ideas. Jack stared at the papers spread out before him. His name, Monroe Performance Motors, was front and center on every page. Logos, branding concepts, licensing plans. Riley, or rather Ariel, had come prepared. But it wasn't just flashy, it was thoughtful. "What is this?" he asked, brow furrowed. Riley leaned against the work table, arms crossed. Your dream. I just helped draw the borders. You rebuilt a whole business plan in 2 weeks? Technically, 10 days, she smirked. And I had a few resources. Jack shook his head in disbelief. You really think this could work? I know it can. You have the hands, the legacy, the loyalty. I have a few contacts, a bit of capital, he scoffed. A bit? Her expression turned serious. I'm not here to buy you, Jax. I'm here to build with you. He looked away, jaw clenched. Last time I partnered with someone, it ended with me nearly losing the place. I'm not Ben, she said quietly. I know, but it still scares the hell out of me. Silence fell between them again, heavy but not hostile. Riley stepped closer. Let me show you something. She pulled a second folder from her satchel and handed it over. Inside were transfer documents, not into her name, but into his. She was offering partial control, legal protections, and an airtight clause that prevented her from pulling out without mutual agreement. It's your shop, Jax, always will be. He stared at the offer. Finally, he looked up. You really did fall for me, huh? She smiled, eyes shining. Harder than I crashed that damn bike. A slow grin broke over his face. That was a hell of a crash. That's how I knew it was real. They sealed the deal not with a handshake, but with a kiss. This one was different, not electric or desperate, steady, solid, the kind that said, we're in this now, for real. The grand reopening of Monroe Performance Motors didn't come with a red carpet or fireworks. It came with elbow grease, community, and the scent of smoked ribs from Maya's food truck. The town turned out in full, curious, skeptical, and eventually impressed. The garage had been gutted and reborn, new lifts, painted floors, neon signs. But Jax had insisted on keeping the old name on the front. Monroe Auto and Cycle, since 1979. A tribute to his father. Inside, Riley worked the front desk, coordinating custom orders and charming skeptical bikers with ease. She'd traded her corporate power suit for a slim-fit tee and boots, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail, but her presence was unmistakable. Maya was the first to say what others were thinking. You're her, aren't you? That tech girl from the news? Riley didn't flinch. I was. Now I'm here. Maya nodded. Well, you've got good taste. Don't mess this up. As the day rolled on, customers placed orders. Classic rebuilds, custom jobs, performance upgrades. Jax had work lined up for the next 3 months before sundown. Later that night, they stood out back, watching the stars return. We did it, Jax murmured. You did it, Riley said. He pulled her in, arms wrapping tight around her waist. We did. From the shadows, a reporter snapped a photo, soon to be the centerpiece of a glowing article titled, From Boardroom to Backroads, Ariel Quinn's Second Act. But for once, neither of them cared. Months passed. The shop grew, the name spread. They took on apprentices. Riley's contacts sent custom bikes their way, and Jax's reputation did the rest. They became a symbol of grit meets glamour, of what happened when two wildly different worlds collided and chose to build something instead of break. But it wasn't the fame or the press that meant the most. It was the quiet mornings, Riley in Jax's arms, coffee in hand, planning paint schemes. It was the laughter that came after hard days. It was rebuilt from the wreckage. One evening, as the desert cooled and the sky turned violet, Riley found Jax sanding down an old Bonneville. He looked up, grease smudged on his cheek. You never stop moving, she said, teasing. He grinned. That's rich, coming from the woman who outran a Fortune 500 scandal. She laughed. Touché. She joined him, crouching beside the frame. You know, he said, not looking up, I used to think gold meant success. Cars, cash, fame. And now I know gold's just a shine, grease. Grease is the proof of work, of living. She leaned in. And love? He looked at her. Love is what stays, even when the grease wears off. She kissed him there in the fading light. Nothing dramatic, no crescendo, just the quiet certainty that this was it. That beneath the grease, beneath the gold, beneath the lies and scars and second chances, they'd found something that couldn't be faked. Something real, something built to last.